think I'm live. I should be on my phone here. It always has such a delay. Of course. Hi guys, happy March. I'm just gonna give it a second for people to hop in. I'm gonna light some lavender and then we're gonna get started. It's probably gonna be somewhat of a long, it always has such a delay, video. I don't know, you guys, I fell into a bunch of rabbit holes that I want to cover before I even get to the chart. So I don't know, we'll be here for a while, but apparently I have reached that stage in life where you no longer just like pull muscles, but you like full blown blow out your back. I seem to have really injured myself and my back is very, very, very hurt. So I'm hoping that I can make it as long as I can. I have a heating pad and Eddie's supposed to come bring me another one here in a little bit, but I might have to tap out early if I'm like in a lot of pain. All right, so I'm just gonna share my screen. We're gonna hop into some slides and we're gonna talk about the month ahead. Those of you watching this on Patreon, you have access to the monthly calendar printed over or linked over on Patreon, which is a PDF, which is super clear and easy to read. Those of you who are watching this later on YouTube, I think I'm going to release it tomorrow. These monthly videos I'm going to start releasing at the beginning of the month since I unlock everything else on Patreon now. By the way, Patreon has kind of changed to where you guys can just pay whatever you want and all the tiers are unlocked, because I know everybody is going through so many changes, and these next eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio are going to bring even more financial changes for all of us, so that should be fun. Hi Julia. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, this over in my little thing and we'll get going here. I have like so many things open, so just bear with me here tonight. Okay, as always, this is our thumbnail. I like to try to put as much here as possible to, you know, make it easy to kind of sum it up and also for me to reference back to. So I don't have to watch these long videos, but I can keep track of like the cycles that are coming through, the like new moons versus full moons, and these different planetary cycles. So okay, yeah, I am blocking just this one image. It's a picture of Atlantis. You can see it on the thumbnail, but my face is blocking it. I did format all the other slides right though. We're going to kind of cover this as we go. Much of it we're going to cover later, so I don't want to get too far into it now. I do want to kind of just note some of the artwork that we have here. So this is Persephone with her pomegranate. I looked for a really long time to try to find out what artist this is. I found it on Pinterest. I can find multiple versions of it. I can find white background, I can find black background, I can find like a ton of different versions, but I cannot find who did it. If you know, please let me know. I forgot to write down this guy's name too, but I have it linked somewhere. Hi, Heather. This is an image of the Sphinx. We're going to be talking about that archetype here tonight a lot more. It's something that we've already been touching on a lot, at least over on Patreon. I don't know about over here on YouTube if you guys have been pulled into any of the Sphinx rabbit holes. But we're going to be diving into that a lot more. And then of course this is Atlantis. And this here is a picture of a super massive black hole. March is a very significant month for a multitude of reasons. One, we have our equinox this month, which we're going to be touching on heavily here. At the moment of both equinoxes, the spring equinox, which we'll be having here in the northern hemisphere, it'll be the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. And the autumn equinox, the sun aligns with the supergalactic center. So we're going to be touching on that a lot here. It actually aligns through opposition in the spring. And yeah, these are all things we're going to touch on as we go. Do I want to touch on any of this now? Nah, we'll touch on this all as we go. Okay, so here, if you are watching this on YouTube, feel free to take a screenshot. We've actually added a couple of things this month, and I'm going to dive into this a little bit as we go. But before we do, I always forget to do this. Could you please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you are not already subscribed? Also, if you are watching this on YouTube later, could you write a comment or something with an emoji or something? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get monetized. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but I don't think they're very happy with me. So all help is appreciated. Thank you so much. Also, if you are looking to join Patreon, the link is found below. Above here is the same sort of synopsis of the month. But what I want to touch on here is what I've added. So if you've been following along with my work for a while, you know I've been making these calendars for quite some time. And this calendar tracks not only all the traditional planetary transits happening, which are throughout this, usually the yellow ones are the ones that aren't highlighted, or the black ones. These are the ones normal astrologers are talking about. I've also been tracking certain asteroids and black hole alignments and fixed star conjunctions. Those are usually the green ones. And then I've been doing this thing for a while where I've been tracking the moon's orbit throughout the entire month as it transits all of these key points. And those are these blue ones here down at the bottom. And this is something we've been doing to try to combine these different zodiacal systems. So what we're doing here, combining it all together, is really looking at the sun transiting the zodiac through a tropical year, so traditional Western tropical astrology. And then each month we're following the moon through a sidereal month. And so we're using both of these systems. And it's kind of been a way of for me to kind of merge these things together and work with both luminaries. And I found out later that it's actually a very ancient form of astrology, much like the fixed star astrology that I started with. It is the most ancient form of astrology. I usually pick these things up and then later find out that's kind of how they did it back in the day. I'm not really inventing anything here. But what I've been starting to kind of do myself through a bunch of star charts and books and lots of work was, and mostly over on Patreon, so some of you Patreon members, you might know that this is kind of a thing I've been touching on, is the concept of what is happening in the sky. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but the stars that we see at night are not the stars that it is the zodiac season of. The zodiac season is where the sun is. So it's actually the stars we can't see. The stars we see at night are the opposite stars, unless of course you're in the southern hemisphere. I know I have a lot of you guys, I have a lot of Patreon members from Australia, and especially this month, and whenever we're talking about any sort of equinox or solstice, it's reversed for you guys. I don't know really how to interpret that for you. I really don't. But come and join Patreon, because we do have a couple of members from down there who are posting lots of interesting Southern Hemisphere astrology, and we have little threads going over on Discord. But anyway, I've been pondering this concept of astrology really being elitist in nature. Astrology like we know it today requires heavy calculations and mathematical configurations and being able to chart and map. And this kind of stuff was usually left only to the high priestly class or the mystery schools or the kings and the royalty, like the everyday people who were really the ones responsible for creating a lot of the stories and legends and myths that we now attribute to these stars. They weren't really using the sky the way the elites were to predict war and famine and this and that. They were using them to tell a story at night at the campfire. They were looking up at the stars and telling a story. And so they were looking at the ones that they could see. Those are the ones that ultimately pull us together. And I have been doing a lot of work to try to figure out what those are. Obviously, it's usually the stars opposite where the sun is, but it's not all of them. And it's been kind of hard for me to figure out. And then the other day, I went to the thrift store. I knew I needed to go to the thrift store that day too. Like, I don't know, I've said this a bunch of times, but my books find me, you guys. I swear, I'm always on the hunt for the next book, and I just know when it's coming. And at Salvation Army, I picked up this freaking fabulous book called North Star to the Southern Cross, and it's actually written by two astronomers. And it's one of the only astronomy books that I have that does not belittle astrology. Most astronomers just completely write off all astrology, and he does not do that. He actually worked at a planetarium. This book was written in the 70s. I think it was written in 76. And he worked at a planetarium like his whole life, telling stories about the stars. And then he wrote this book for beginners, and it literally has the sky. And we're going to look at, I took screenshots or pictures. It has the sky broken up into every month, and literally the exact diagram that I was looking for. And so now I have started to add, and of course it's only for the northern hemisphere, you guys. But really, and I'm going to show you this later on the globe, most of the globe can see the northern stars. Really, it's just, even Australia can see Polaris, I believe. I think like the tip of it can see Polaris. And so I started adding the story that we see. And this is what we can look up at night. These are the stars that we can gaze at. These are the stars that are calling out to us. These are the stars that are shining down on us. These are the stars that are in their glory, that are at their peak. And so that's what we have added here. We're going to dive into this as we go, because I have slides, but I just wanted to point that out to you here. I'm not really going to dive into any of this chart except for to point out a couple of things. Actually, I guess I'll just point out the equinox thing. So most people are probably going to tell you, and this is what I first found when I Googled when is the equinox this year, as March 20th. But when you Google time zones and the specific time, if you're here on the West Coast like I am, I'm in California, so I am Pacific Standard Time. For me, the exact moment of the equinox when the sun crosses the equator is actually on the 19th. It's actually 9:30 on the 19th. So I have these two things written here if you guys care about exacts, which I do. And then this is the key, the color code key. And we'll go over all of these transits when we get to the chart. I want to first cover a couple of things. I want to talk about the equinox, the equilux, the sky above us, and a little bit of a conspiracy that I have discovered. And we're going to pull out the globe. Oh, and then we're going to go and talk about, yeah, we're going to go a whole bunch of places. Okay. I'm not going to cover this too much. I covered this last year. So if you want to know more about the difference between the equinox and the equilux, I recommend watching my March video from last year. It is available here on YouTube, so everybody has access to it. But there's actually two different things that occur around this time, and they have two different names. One is the equinox and one is the equilux. The equinox actually happens technically on March 19th, at 9:30 Pacific Standard Time. It's an exact moment, and it's the exact same time for everybody, everywhere, all over the planet. Just your time zone will change. So you can go ahead and take this time and put it into a time calculator and translate this to whatever your time zone is, and that will be the exact time for you. But it has to be the date, like put the date and time, because some of you will be a different day. So the word equinox is actually derived from the Latin word, however you say this, which means equal, and nox, which means night. On the day of the equinox, daytime and nighttime are approximately equal duration, but really it's more of a mathematical calculation as to when the sun enters Aries and when the sun crosses the equator, which we're going to look at here in a second. This happens twice a year. It happens in March and in the spring. Now, there's another day that happens around this time. I have a graph here that will show you when it is for you. And this is the equilux. This is the actual day that is like measured where day and night are actually equal. It's not just the day that the sun crosses the equator, but really the balance between hours is equal. And that's what this means, equal light. And it's dependent upon your freaking latitude. It's dependent upon your latitude. So it's different for everybody. It's not this mathematically calculated moment that the sun crosses the equator, but it's really dependent upon where you live. It's a personal moment. And last year I went very heavily into how every year around this time we have the time change. Those of you in like Arizona and some places are lucky you don't have the time change. But many of us do. And I floated the idea last year that it was a total psyop, and it's meant to throw off this moment of equilibrium that comes, this moment that literally the entire last zodiacal cycle was building up to. From the start of Aries season, we went and grew all through the 12 signs. We had this peak spiritual moment in Pisces season, and now we're ready to be reborn anew in the spring at this moment of equilibrium. We're going to talk here in a little bit, I guess we could do it now, at this concept of the mini golden age. They say that back in the day, the golden age that's spoken about in like pretty much all pantheons and religions was when the pole was straight. And there was some sort of cataclysm that caused this pole tilt. And that tilt is what causes the seasons. But when the pole was straight, we had what they call permanent spring. But I like to call it permanent equinox because it's a permanent balance between light and dark, and things could flourish. You couldn't live in certain areas that were like really cold, but around the equator particularly was very flourishing. And so when we have the equilux or the equinox come around, it is this moment of equilibrium that we're able to obtain, but we're also being like thrown off kilter because the time changes on the 13th and literally throws off this balance that we've been seeking this whole time. And so last year I really pointed this out, and I made it a point to find ways to stay grounded, to find ways to like keep my sleep, not that I have the best sleep schedule, but to just find ways to harness this moment of equilibrium that's coming through this month without getting too thrown off. And a lot of it had to do with like my belief about it, because I feel it a lot, the time changes. And a lot of the times I'm like, oh my God, that time change is really messing with me. And I'm saying these things over and over and over again. I'm like instilling that in my brain. So really a lot of it was like switching my own belief system around it. And it's like, yeah, an hour's gone, but what is time anyway? It's not even real. It's a man-made construct. And this moment of equilibrium is still here around us. And another one of the key things happening this month, which is actually happening on the 22nd, is our sun aligning with the supergalactic center, which we're going to touch on as we go. I just want to get through this and into the chart first. But these are all the key things happening this month. A fucking time change, man. This is the graph. It's from timeanddate.com that is dependent upon your latitude for the equilux. For both spring and autumn. So I live in Los Angeles, a little bit off of Los Angeles is like the 34th parallel, but I am a little bit off. So I'm actually on the 33rd. So for me, it's going to be on the 24th. You're going to want to look and see, where do you live? If you have your birth chart in front of you, your birth chart actually has your lat and long. So you can look. Usually, I don't know where astro.com has it. I think it's up at the top. Hold on. I have an astro.com chart right here. So I think that's what most of you guys are using. Yeah, it's right up at the top. So right under your house system, up at the top on AstroSeek or astro.com has your latitude. If you don't know, you can literally just Google your city and find it here, and then this will be the date. So if you live, you know, say at 50 degrees northern latitude for you, it's going to be on the 17th. It's going to be more closer to St. Patrick's Day. So here's how you find it. And like I said, I did a video last year where I talked very heavily about this. Okay, so really quick, we're going to talk about what exactly happens at the equinox. These are pages from this book, a book I'm going to be using quite a lot. I'm so glad I found this book. It found me, like I said. My books, they just find me, dude. I don't even know. So we're going to be talking about what exactly happens at the equinox. Okay, so what we have here is a graph. I love how they always kind of just show part of the earth, and I'm going to show you why here in a second, and how it is like a literal side. Especially right now, especially with the current world events, like, oh, I don't know if people even realize this. Okay, so at the moment of the equinox, the sun actually crosses the equator. It doesn't cross it here on Earth. This is actually an inaccurate chart. I have an accurate one here on the next slide, but for the purpose of this little infinity symbol I want to point out, this chart helps. Not only do we have the equator, but we also have two other important like meridian lines that are tied to the solar holidays and also the zodiac. And that's the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, which are connected to our solstice points. This is the high point of the sun's orbit. Its peak as high as it goes. And this is the low point of the sun's orbit. Although this is actually when the sun is closer to us, and this is actually when the sun is farther away. Point being, it makes what looks like an infinity symbol throughout the year. The other half is made on the other side of the earth as it goes around. But it crosses the equator twice a year. It crosses the equator at the equinox, at the spring equinox and at the autumn equinox. As you can see, I highlighted here. It says the sun crosses the equator on usually around March 21st. This year it's actually on the 19th for us here in the west coast, on the west coast. Yeah, I guess none of the rest of that's important. And I mostly just wanted to show you this. And what's interesting about this point is that not only does the sun cross the equator at the moment of the equinox, but it's crossing the point on the equator that the equator crosses with the ecliptic. So this blue line right here is the band of the zodiac. It's called the ecliptic. It's tilted because our axis is tilted. So the equator is connected to our poles. It tilts with the poles, and so it's this tilted meridian, this tilted circle that cuts across the Earth. And then the ecliptic, which is believed to have been along the equator before the pole shifted, is at an angle. But they cross, and they cross at the equinox points, which is extremely important. Okay. So if you guys have followed me on, I think this was only a Patreon video where we started diving into like the prime meridian, and we touched on some of this stuff already. I think I want to just kind of go to the camera and go to this globe to kind of make my point here. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I hope that this works. I was not sure if it's going to work, if it's going to look good enough here. Okay, so this is a really old globe. It's back, I mean, it can't be that old, but it doesn't have Russia. It has the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, is the USSR. But what it does have is the zodiac band. And it was a while ago that I actually noticed this. I actually noticed that the prime meridian, so 0 degrees latitude, the prime meridian. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this, you guys, because it's like backwards and really hard. Okay, there it is. This big dotted line is what's known as the prime meridian. If you Google the prime meridian, wow, okay. If you Google the prime meridian, you will find that it runs through Greenwich, England. Wow. I'm a hot mess. Okay, you will find that it runs through Greenwich, England. You will also find that it was picked for really no rhyme or reason. You usually will see only images like this that show it slicing the earth like this through the front, kind of looking at the earth like it's a flat two-dimensional image. And they forget to mention that this goes all the way around. It's a circle that goes all the way around, and it also cuts through here, but they always make it look like these things are so far away from each other. They make it seem like it's just an arbitrary line that they chose to make it simple because we needed a 0 degree point, and that it runs through London, it runs through England, through Greenwich. It actually is extremely important and not arbitrary at all, because this prime meridian doesn't just run through Greenwich, it runs through where the equinox line is. It runs through, I wish there was an easier way for me to show this to you guys. I feel like I'm really struggling. I wish my table was just a little bit, okay, there. Okay, that's good. Okay. If you see right here, this is the ecliptic. This line that tilts right here, this is the zodiac's ecliptic. This, and 0 degrees of Aries, the equinox point is right here, okay? This line is the equator, which is also important. It's also like the celestial equator. But this is our equator, right? This is the ecliptic, and this is the prime meridian, which runs through here. Okay? Got that far? Okay. So obviously we can see that it's extremely important. The prime meridian is not an arbitrary line that they just chose to run through Greenwich, England. It is extremely important. It runs through the equinox. It runs through where the equinox sun crosses the equator, and it runs with where the equator crosses the ecliptic, the zodiac. I wrote somewhere that this is the celestial equator, meeting the terrestrial meridian, so the sky and the earth meeting here. And then we also have it meeting the zodiac, meeting our like cosmic clock. And this is the balance point between light and dark, because this is our equinox point, right? Okay. Now, did London, which was built upon ancient Druid Celtic sites, did they know this? Yes, they knew this. And how do you think they knew this? Well, it's about 1 degree away from Stonehenge, and it runs through countless stone megalithic sites all through France and England. Most of those sites were later destroyed and churches were built on top, or government sites, or even like occult lodges. Like I think there's like a Masonic lodge like literally right next to Stonehenge. It's probably closer to this meridian than Stonehenge is. But anyway, it's a significant line, right? And all we really see is that it runs through this point here, right? And as I showed you on this map, they usually show it to you like this. Oh, look, it runs through here. So cool. It runs through Greenwich, England. Oh, in France and stuff like that. Yada, yada, yada. You can scroll through here and they'll tell you all the different meridians, right? And you can scroll down to the bottom, and this is the 180th meridian. So this is what sits opposite this half of the line and is on the other side of the globe. What is opposite the Greenwich. And they don't even give you a country here for it. They just say it's like this random line. Okay, so we're gonna look and see what this line actually is here in a second. Okay, so if you spin the globe around, you see that this line cuts all the way through the globe. Obviously, all lat and long lines do. And you'll see that it runs mostly through just ocean. It, of course, runs through Antarctica down at the bottom. A couple of islands. One of them is called Phoenix Island, which I find interesting. The other side is really close to an island called Ascension Island. But if you go up here at the top, you see that it crosses through eastern Russia, right here, and Alaska. This is Alaska. This is literally Alaska, you guys. Like Russia is right here and Alaska is literally right here. I love how this globe colored Alaska blue, so it looks like ocean, so it looks farther apart, but like literally like you could throw a rock from Russia to Alaska. Like it's right there. I don't know if you guys knew that. I knew they were really close, and I knew that if there was any sort of like thing that went down or whatever, that Alaska would be the one to probably be like this Pearl Harbor or whatever, but I didn't realize they were that close. But really this line on the other side cuts mostly through water other than Antarctica, Alaska, so America, and Russia. So this is going to be the meridian line. The meridian, prime means original. It means like the OG, like the original source, the prime source, right? It's usually prime numbers can only be divided by themselves and 1 because they are the 1. They're just a fractal of the 1, right? And so this is the prime OG meridian, which is an energy line. It's an Earth's energetic line, particularly connected to our grid system that we've mapped out for ourselves here with lat and long lines. And this is activated every equinox on both sides. And so I found this really interesting, and then I fell into a couple of rabbit holes, but really quick I want to kind of I'm gonna go back to those slides really quick. Anyway, this is suspect. Like, they really don't want you to know how close we are to Russia. They really, like, do not want us to even understand how things line out. They don't want us to know the importance of this line. They want us to think it's completely arbitrary. Greenwich Meridian was chosen because of its location, and the government and royal ties to that area they're there because of the energetic significance. Stonehenge is so close by. Like I said, it's off by 1 degree. This is 0 degrees. Stonehenge is at like 1 degrees, 20 something minutes or something like that. Okay. Hopefully you guys pick up what I'm throwing down. I know I wasn't even planning on getting all technical, but like I said, I fell into this rabbit hole. So here we are. This is something we've already talked about over on Patreon. I don't remember what video it was. I'll find it for you guys and I'll link it over on Discord, but we touched really heavily on this concept of this celestial equator being the constellations that we can all see all the time everywhere on Earth. And then the ecliptic being the ones that only half the hemisphere can see at a time and half the hemisphere can't, the zodiac. And so the celestial equator really being what pulls us together. We have some interesting constellations that actually fall on the celestial equator that we can see this month, that being the unicorn and the compass, and also the ship that Jason takes on his quest to the Golden Fleece, which is ultimately Aries. We'll touch on that probably maybe during the Aries moon. We'll touch on that mythology. But ultimately Aries is the Golden Fleece. And that is the quest for this rebirth, this immortality, this divinity. And this celestial equator we can all see all at once. This was just the pictures of the globe. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to show you the globe, but I think I did a pretty good job. As you can see, this is the ecliptic. So this is the zodiac. Here's Aries. You can see the little Aries symbol right underneath this circle. There's Ascension Island down there. This is the Greenwich Meridian. This is the ecliptic, and this is the equator. And they all cross right here, and then this line runs through Africa, Spain, France, the United Kingdom, and then up to the North Pole. And as you can see here, this is Russia. This is Alaska. This is also Alaska. And this is the prime meridian that runs through it. So this is the area on the Earth that is going to be highlighted through this month astrologically, celestially. So I guess we can keep an eye on this area of the world. I think it's going to be pretty significant here over the coming time. I actually dove into this area a little bit, and I found out some stuff that I didn't know. I have it written here. Okay. Did you guys know that we bought Alaska from Russia? For some reason, I thought we always got it from Canada. But I guess Canada didn't even become Canada until about the same time we bought we bought Alaska from Russia. So we bought Alaska from Russia in 1867, which was actually 11 years after the last time Neptune and Jupiter conjuncted in Pisces. So if you guys have been listening to me ramble on, you've been hearing me talk about how we're having this influx of energy we haven't felt since the 1800s. Well, this was happening around that same time. We bought Alaska from Russia, and then this area, particularly this area, these islands, were like a key battleground, I guess you could call it, during World War II. We actually fought Japan here. Japan invaded these islands during World War II around 1942 to 1945, which is actually when my grandfather was stationed here in Alaska. I can't actually find out what he did there. I've tried, but I know he was stationed in Alaska during those years. So Japan invaded, and we fought them or whatever. Nowadays, there's a military base here, an Air Force base, lots of different military bases and Coast Guard bases. And during the 60s and 70s, we had tons of atomic and nuclear testing done in this area. So that's fun. So then I was like, okay, well, I want to see the chart of when we bought this shit from Russia. So I know we're going like super off topic, and I'm not even sure if you guys care about this stuff, but this is where I've been all day, and my back hurt, and I sat here doing this. So you guys are going to listen. I'm just kidding. You could totally leave if you want. Okay. So we are going to animate a bi-wheel so we can see the sky now. The outside chart is the sky now, and the inside chart was October 18th, 1867, which was apparently the day that we bought Alaska from Russia. So I was like, whoa, what was going on? I really wanted to see what was going on in Pisces, because I feel like the Pisces energy right now is super significant, particularly the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction we're going to have next month. I don't know why. It doesn't necessarily mean war. It does mean death. Pisces is a sign of death. But I was interested to see what was happening there, because that 1800s date kind of intrigued me. And the first thing I noticed was all of this Neptune Chiron action. So if you see here, this is the chart for today. Chiron actually falls at 22 degrees. And today we have Neptune conjunct the Chiron, conjunct Chiron. The Chiron of the chart of 1867. Chiron is the planet of wounds. And Neptune is ultimately the planet of spirituality and spells, right? And the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that we're going to have next month in April, on April 12th, is actually going to be happening right on top of this Chiron placement. The same time that transiting Chiron will be conjunct the Neptune placement. So we'll have Neptune and Jupiter, the rulers of Pisces, on top of Chiron, and Chiron on top of Neptune. I wrote here that this is spiritual warfare. These are wounds that are deeply tied to the spiritual realm. And what we're seeing playing out here is obviously repeated cycles connected to World War II. It's connected to like so many different wars, you guys. We have the Revolutionary War playing out once more with the Pluto return. We have World War II playing out with Uranus and Taurus has a lot to do with World War II as well. And then this is because Uranus was in Taurus during World War II. And then this was during the 1800s when we had that Jupiter-Neptune energy coming through and all this Piscean energy. The eclipses were actually happening there during that year. So I don't know. I don't know what this all means, but I think it's very interesting how close we are to Russia and how it's connected so much to the equinox, considering everything that's happening. So that being said, these people like to partake in big moves during big energetic periods. So please be safe and smart, and remember that we are in a waking fucking spell. Like, please do not believe any single thing coming to you, particularly from the realm of media, because it is not true. Nothing is true right now. Everything is an illusion. We need to remember that moving forward. Okay. Let's talk about what is happening in our night sky right now. So this is more pages from this fabulous book, North Star to the Southern Cross. These are the pages for March. So this graphic makes me so happy, you guys. This is seriously what I was looking for. What you have here is showing that the sun is going to be in Pisces for most of March, but it will be moving into Aries. That's why Aries is highlighted. And when In astrology, you can actually place the Earth in your chart. If you place the Earth in your chart, it will always be opposite the sun. And so it shows here that like the Earth is over here. It is actually technically in Virgo for most of the month, but it will be moving into Libra when we move into Aries. These signs here are in the dark. These are actually the signs that we can see in our night sky. Amongst many other constellations, particularly the circumpolar ones, the ones that sit up high and they do not set and they revolve around the celestial pole. We don't have time to talk about all of them. What I want to talk about are the key ones that are highlighted throughout the month. And then I want to zero in on this Beehive nebula, this Beehive cluster. So, the main constellations that are at its peak this month are Canis Major. So this is the dog constellation. It's the constellation that houses Sirius. If you were to go outside right now in the northern hemisphere, Sirius is going to be the brightest star you see. Like if you look up at the sky, you cannot miss Sirius. It's so bright. It's like, hi. And then if you look a little bit to the right, you'll see Orion. Those are the main constellations right now for stargazing. We've talked a lot about Sirius and its mythology, so I'm not going to get into it now, but if you want to know about it, watch the Lionsgate video that is also here on YouTube. The Cancer constellation is extremely prevalent right now as well, even though it itself is a very, very, very faint constellation. What's interesting is that it has a deep space object known as the Beehive cluster. And so I dove into the Beehive cluster, you guys, and I found some interesting things. Sean, you are going to love this with your Cancer stellium. So as you see here, this is the Crab constellation. Here in the middle, we have M44, which is known as the Beehive cluster. You can see it here by its older name, which is pronounced Praesipe. It's like literally like pray and then see and then pay, like pay money. And it's right here in the center of Cancer. So the Beehive cluster is a cluster of over 1,000 stars. It's actually the closest star cluster. I'm just going to read this. It's an open star cluster in our galaxy. They are gravitationally bound stars that are created out of the same nebula, kind of similar to the Orion Nebula that you see inside Orion's kind of like stomach area. I don't know, the bottom part of him. So the Beehive is one of the nearest open clusters to our sun. It's actually really close. I think it's only like 500 or 600 light years from us. For reference, Sirius is our closest star, and it's 8.2 light years from Earth. Actually, Alpha Centauri is our closest star, and it's 5 light years from Earth. Okay, Sirius is the brightest star. Alpha Centauri is the closest star. Okay, so it has an extremely large population of stars. This was the first deep space object that we really kind of like knew about. And we can see with our eyes, like with our own eyes. The ancients knew about it. A lot of the other, like, Maser objects or galaxies, well, sometimes they're galaxies, sometimes they're clusters, sometimes they're other things. But a lot of those we need technology for. You can actually see the Beehive with the naked eye if you don't have a lot of light pollution. The ancient Japanese knew of it as, however you say this, and that translated to pile of corpses. But the Chinese, and they were actually like really terrified of it apparently, but the Chinese knew of it as a name that translated to the spirit of the ancestors. Praesipe is the Latin word for cradle or manger. And some of my other star books go into how it is associated with the manger of Christ. So I find it very interesting that it is up at the peak, this manger star, at the moment that we're having this rebirth, this Christ rebirth that is spring, that is the equinox where we are reborn anew. And this is what it was known of long before the Beehive. They don't really know where the Beehive name came from or who started it or why it's called that. But I have a theory that it was a Mason because they really like bees. They really like bees. So I think later they changed it to that. But anyway, I find that interesting, especially this concept of a bunch of stars being in a area. I read in some of these other books that it was like a pile of souls or a pile of spirits or a pile of like new incarnations. And I find it interesting that this Cancer area we've attributed a lot, and even does this astronomy book, which made me so happy because astronomers normally do not say things like that, but even this astronomer touches on what we have been touching on, is that Cancer is the gate of men. It's where all souls come through, that where they descend from heaven into human bodies. And so I find it interesting that it has this cluster of all these little souls inside the cradle in the constellation that is the gate of man, to which all souls descend, which is Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which is the sign that governs the womb and the mother. Very interesting. But anyway, that was one of my many rabbit holes. Okay, you guys, I did that faster than I thought I was going to. We're going to get into the chart. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Hopefully some of that made sense. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna drink some water. I can't believe I dropped that globe all the way across the room. Actually, I can totally believe that, 100%. Okay. I tried to be organized, you guys, but in my trying to be organized, I get obsessive and then I do too much stuff because I can't stop seeing like patterns everywhere. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through this chart. I just want to make sure I have all my notes. Oh, that chart for when we bought Alaska from Russia, it also had some pretty interesting transits. The moon was conjunct the pole star. And when I wrote that this is some sort of like spiritual war, obviously much of what's going on is a spiritual war. It's a war for your soul. I wrote that it has a lot to do with the North, and a lot of that started even more so after World War II, but this like concept of the poles, and all countries still are battling over who controls both the North and South Pole. And so I find it interesting that the moon was conjunct the pole star on that day. And Atlantis was exactly conjunct the Sphinx. I don't know what that says. I have no idea, but I found that super interesting. All right, I just want to get all this out of the way so I know I talked about all my stuff. Okay, we're good. I did that in an hour. Am I in the corner? Okay. All right, so if you guys are a Patreon member, we talked about the first like week of the month during our last moon video. We talked about that because we had our Pisces new moon on the 2nd. So we met on the 1st and we talked about the first week. We talked about the Pisces moon. We talked about Mercury conjunct Saturn. We talked about this Venus, Mars, Pluto conjunction that happened back on the 3rd. We talked about the sun conjunct Jupiter, but I guess we didn't touch on the, I guess we can start around the 5th. We'll talk about the shift into Aquarius. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Is that going to keep the chat? Oh, yes. Good, 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 good. Okay. I wanted to just kind of touch on something that happened on the 1st first. I wasn't aware of this back when we met. But this actually, Los Angeles. Chiron. Oh, so it was later in the day. Okay. So on the 1st, we had Chiron conjunct the asteroid Sophia. This set off the energy of the whole month, which, as we're going to see as we move on through here, oh my God, my back, is, Eddie's supposed to be bringing me another heater. I said 40 minutes, but it's been 55. This set off the energy for the whole month. Chiron, that planet of wounds, but also of wisdom. And Sophia, that primordial, often forgotten feminine source, right? And we're going to be seeing as we go through this chart about how we're really being triggered to look at this energy differently. We're going to talk on the 8th when we meet for the next moon, when we meet for, no, I mean on the 16th when we meet for the next moon, about how the zodiac lays out and how it is. I don't know. I channeled a bunch of notes the other day, you guys. I was going to touch on it on this video, but I knew I didn't have enough time. But I think I might release the next video on YouTube because I think it's pretty significant. But we're going to be talking about how the coming home to the mother. That's what this Virgo full moon we're going to have later this month is. That's what Persephone's return back to her mother Demeter is all about. That's what the rebirth of spring, the rebirth of nature is all about. It is the spark of light, of masculine consciousness that is Aries, but it is this rebirth, this peak, this pinnacle of the earth mother. And the month started off with Chiron conjunct Sophia, really reminding us of these deep, deep, deep wounds that ultimately are connected to the suppression, the repression, and the obliteration of the divine feminine force. So fast forward to the 5th, because we talked about a lot of this stuff already. I don't want to, we're past this. Let's get into the month. We're winging it this month, you guys. Okay. So on the 5th, we had some pretty significant planetary shifts happen where planets changed signs. Both Mars and Venus entered Aquarius later in the day. So now they're in Aquarius. This shifted energy a lot. This shifted our focus more towards the collective, more towards groups, more towards the humanity as a whole. Also looking out at our future. Aquarius very much governs our future. With both Venus and Mars there, it has both of the celestial lovers working together, right? Venus is our planet of relationships. Mars is our planet of passion. Venus is our planet of money and values, and Mars is our planet of how we fight for what it is that we value. It's also our planet of action, and where Mars is where we will be taking action. And right now the action is aligned with our values, and it's focused on the future, and it just did a lot of alchemical work as it transited Pluto in Capricorn, the sign of initiation, the sign of climbing that mountain, the sign of the system, the sign of authority. Did we take back some of our own authority? The sign of hard work and responsibility. It's ruled by Saturn, and so it's connected to our karma, but it's also connected to our path of initiation and lots and lots and lots of hard work. And so being that Pluto is there, Pluto is that planet that brings death and ultimate rebirth. And so it has given a phoenix moment, if you will, to our values, and also the spark of fire that fights for those. And right now it's ultimately focused on our future, but it's focused on our future particularly connected to not just the collective as a whole, being as though it's in Aquarius, but more so our immediate relationships. How can we protect what it is that we value and navigate the collective of Aquarius while doing what's best for ourselves and our relationships? Mars, Venus, right? How can we merge with the whole while staying true to ourselves is ultimately what this transit through Aquarius is going to be about. They met, Mars and Venus met at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And that is the point of our great conjunction that we had back on December 21st, 2020, when Saturn and Jupiter met here at 0 degrees and started a new 20-year cycle. And many of us initiated things around that time. I started my new website. It was my Patreon. No, I started my new website around that time, and I launched like different products and my readings. And when Mars and Venus comes around and hits that same degree point, it's like these personal planets are coming to give way to what these more societal planets initiated, these more long-held transits initiated. These are where we can start to take action. And with being Venus and Mars, this is where people, Venus, will come in to lend a hand, and we'll also have this sort of like motivation to push forward, which is Mars. This can also kind of make for obvious tensions in relationships. And being as though it's Aquarius, it can be kind of like detached emotionally and kind of like oblivious. And so, but like fun. Like Aquarius is super fun and weird, and we're trying new things, and we're thinking out of the box, and we're connecting with people, but on an intellectual level, and not so much on an emotional level, which, you know, this is kind of a breath of fresh air for many of us who have charts who are very dominated in air and fire. Me. My chart is very heavy in air and fire. It's a very heady chart. And so sometimes when there's too much water in the chart, particularly during Pisces season, those of us who are often in our heads can kind of drown a little bit. We kind of drowned a little bit. And so this influx of Aquarius energy was kind of like a breath of fresh air for many of us. I know it's for me. This trines a lot of my points. Actually, these are exactly trying my sun right now. So I'm just like, thank you. I needed that. I needed that the last couple of days. It definitely helped me make this. Because all that Pisces energy before was not going to help me organize this at all. Let's see. Okay. We're going to let's go on to today. On the 6th, Mercury squared the nodes. So if you guys are looking retroactively to what you may have done on Sunday, if you had any sort of like communication come through or information come through, both of which are ruled by Mercury. Mercury was square the nodes. So the nodes are our points where our eclipses are going to be this year. They're actually going to be where our next moon cycle is after we move through Aries season and into Taurus season. That will be eclipse season. And on Sunday, we had Mercury square the nodes. So there you go. Mercury square the nodes. So I don't know. Whatever was coming through on Mercury, action squares require some sort of action to be taken. So if some sort of information came through or some sort of communication came through in regards to some new path forward, which is the North Node, and also which would be in the area of your house ruled by Taurus. You can look to see what house that is for insight. Or not a new path forward, but a place you've been, but like looking at it from a new perspective and having to like work through something or process something or purge something or let go of something. That speaks very heavily to the South Node in Scorpio. You can look to see what house this is for insight, but Mercury was square it. And so our mind was square it. It was being triggered by these points, where we've been, where we're going, and the information we need in order to make these decisions here in the coming months, particularly around eclipse season. And so we might be getting little hints as to what Taurus season may have been about, particularly through the weekend. Okay. So today is the 8th. You guys, I'm not really going to be going too far through any of the like lunar transits down at the bottom this month because we covered so much of that other information, unless, you know, they reach out to me as I'm talking about one of these days. So we're not going to cover all of them, but they're here for you if you want. And I know a lot of you use these. A lot of you use this calendar. Okay, so tomorrow is a very significant day for a multitude of reasons, okay? First of all, tomorrow the 9th, we have Mercury enter Pisces. So this breath of heady clarity that I was having is going to get fuzzy once more. Mercury is my chart ruler. I'm a Virgo rising. So, God, Mercury affects me more than any other planet, but like in a good way. I just have to work with him. And so I know tomorrow I plan on laying in bed literally all day to try to make my back better. I know I had to get this stuff done, and so I've been like fighting through it the past 2 days to try to prepare for this video. But tomorrow I'm gonna lay out and I'm gonna veg and I am gonna watch probably fantasy films all day. But what's interesting tomorrow, not only do we have Mercury entering Pisces, and so we will have both of our mental planets, both Mercury and Jupiter are mental. Mercury rules the 3rd house of the analytical mind, Gemini, and Jupiter rules the 9th house of the higher philosophic mind, Sagittarius. It also governs Pisces as well. It's the ancient traditional ruler. Neptune is the modern ruler. So we have both rulers of Pisces at home in Pisces, as we have the sun, which is another mental conscious planet focused on more like egoic solar consciousness, identity consciousness. And then we have Mercury, which is our logical, analytical mind, our learning mind, our processing mind, the how we process information, not only how we process celestial, spiritual information, as it is our interface between the celestial realm and the Muggle mind. That's why he's called the messenger of the gods. But it's also how we process any other information that we're taking in, whether we're reading or whatever it is, however you take in information. He will be in Pisces. And so we'll have to really, more so than ever, I've been talking about this and I'm going to be talking about it all year, lean into the riddle, which brings me to the other thing that's happening this tomorrow, which is Sphinx conjunct Saturn. So I pulled some cards. I usually pull the cards before I pull the chart. I don't know why I do that, but I do. I don't know why, but I do. And I pulled the cards that we'll go over once we're done with this chart. And I pulled an archetype card, and the card that came out was the riddle. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, I wonder where the asteroid Sphinx is, which was one we had been touching on over on Patreon for some moon. It was aspected somewhere. I can't remember which one. So I put it back in the chart, and of course, tomorrow it will be conjunct Saturn. It will be exactly conjunct Saturn earlier in the day. Saturn is the great teacher. He's the planet of initiation. He teaches us through harsh confrontations with reality, and we move one step up this initiatory ladder, ultimately breaking through the gates of Saturn, moving beyond to the fixed star realm, and we start to integrate these other aspects, and we're no longer in that sort of 7 planetary archonic matrix that I believe traditional astrology kind of is encoded with. I think it encodes our matrix system. When we start to break beyond, which is what ultimately Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, and Neptune, even Neptune helps obliterate boundaries, and even Pluto helps bring us a death and a rebirth into what's next, all of these farther planets. Then we have the stars and the black holes, which start to tap us into a more galactic and stellar consciousness, right? So we have Saturn, that planet of initiation, conjunct the Sphinx, which is ultimately the riddle. And I have written down somewhere, I don't know where, I had notes written somewhere, but I wrote that a riddle is an illusion that has an answer. Where did I write this? Oh my God, I have way more notes than I thought I had. Okay, anyway, we're just gonna wing it. A riddle is an illusion that has an answer. So as we travel this Piscean year, as we travel what I'm calling the illusion, the spell, this wave of mysticism, where both everything and nothing makes sense simultaneously, this realm of symbolism and dreams and the unconscious and archetypes and poetry and art and music and all those things that speak to our soul, but in such an intangible way. We are living in a fantasy realm. We are living in an illusion. We are living in this intangible spiritual realm that has access to all the truths and all the lies simultaneously, right? And so it's hard to kind of know what is what. Especially once Mercury enters here, our mind is no longer in Aquarius. It's no longer thinking logically, but out of the box simultaneously. Aquarius is logical, but also futuristic in its mindset. And so it can dabble its toes in this, and it can grasp onto it, but it's ruled by both Uranus and Saturn. So Saturn is fixed in a lot of its beliefs, and often too logical and too fixed. And Uranus can sometimes be too out of the box that it just shoots left field. But it ultimately is what breaks us free, because it helps us to question this reality, right? Pisces is where we're beyond questioning it. We're just living it, and we understand that there's so much more, and we can't possibly put words to it. But we're living in this spell. And some new riddle is going to be initiated for us tomorrow. A riddle that has initiatory value. A riddle that if we answer correctly, we can obtain an answer for, because riddles have an answer, but they require us to think outside the box. The surface level answer is never right. It always requires, has a little bit of a trick to it. Sphinx, the archetype of the Sphinx is a trickster archetype, but it's a trickster archetype like Mercury that offers knowledge, offers wisdom, but it not to anybody. Just like the initiatory process is not for everybody. Not everybody has the mindset in order to hear and grasp cosmic concepts or the mysteries of existence. It takes a certain person who's been through a certain amount of personal experiences in order to unlock these things. Well, we're all having a new riddle unfold for us, particularly initiated tomorrow. Pay attention to what comes through tomorrow. I don't think this is anything we're going to understand anytime soon, but something will be initiated tomorrow. But I think in order for us to obtain the answer, we have to embrace the unknown, and we have to embrace this realm of symbolism that we are literally swimming in. Always, you guys, like always, but more so than ever this year, this Pisces year is off the chain when it comes to this. Best I can word it is like an influx of mysticism. I see it as like a flood of magic and mysticism, but with that comes all of the other Neptunian concepts, which are, and Piscean concepts, which are fear, illusions, delusions, confusion, dissociation, escapism, illness, greed, and other lower archetypes as well. This is also this also represents like secret societies and all secret agendas and everything that is hidden or repressed, everything that is unconscious, all of our shadow. It governs all of the spiritual realm. So literally everything beautiful and magical and mystical in the spiritual realm, and all of the dark, obscene shit as well. And this is all bubbling up to the surface at once, and we're all swimming through it. And so tomorrow would be a good time to kind of tune in to this concept of the riddle. Come to the realization that you are living within a dream. We all are, always, but like more so than ever this year. And embrace this flood of intangibleness that we are in, and just kind of like go with the flow. Okay, let's get to the 13th. We're skimming over this stuff, you guys. Okay, so on the 13th, our sun will conjunct Neptune. This is the spell. Like, this is the literal spell. I don't know on the world stage what will be happening around that time. It's also the same day as the time change, which makes me just think even more like, oh God, the time change does not sit right with me, you guys. I don't like it at all. I think that, I don't like it. I don't trust it. But you guys know I have trust issues. I trust nobody and nothing. Sun conjunct Neptune on the 13th is a perfect day to create something, to access deep levels of creativity, of imagination, to process something through art or music or writing even. I definitely recommend utilizing this energy, not leaving. So it's a Sunday, so most people won't have to work that day, so we don't have like the muggle world as an excuse. I'm a firm believer of certain transits you really needing to kind of like take the reins of and be like, this is happening on this day, I'm going to channel it into this so that things don't manifest themselves. This can very much manifest as like a complete escapism from reality, complete delusion, confusion, miscommunication, but the miscommunication is happening here in this earthly realm because we are so much more plugged into the other world. We are so much more plugged into the mystical, the magical. This is happening right before our rebirth, right before the equinox. Do something, please, on the 13th. This is the perfect day to create something. If you are like a small business owner or an artist, or literally even if you aren't, like, please do something on that day. It doesn't have to be art. It can just be something deeply spiritual. Neptune in Pisces is deeply spiritual. If you want to do some sort of like channel, I would do some sort of channeling on that day because you can deeply connect to the other side, but know that anything that comes through is coming through in such a cryptic, symbolic way that it is not to be taken literal. And it's more, this kind of energy speaks through metaphors. It speaks through archetypes. It speaks through symbols. It speaks through unconscious impulses. It's deeply intuitive and it's deeply mutable. And so like, go where you're pulled. Like, do not go against the current. Wherever it's taking you, go and flow with it. And things that you couldn't even fathom will unfold for you because we're in the realm of the unfathomable. So our minds can't even fathom it. But we have to kind of embrace this like underworld experience, this kind of like wonderland we're all in. But like I said, the 13th is the time change. So while we have this influx of magic and mysticism and imagination and creativity and all that jazz happening right before equinox, we also have this time change coming to just throw off our whole equilibrium. It's just fabulous. So I talked about how the month started with Chiron conjunct Sophia and this like wound of the feminine being triggered, and how the month kind of has a lot to do with our shift of perspective when it comes to this feminine energy. And a lot of that really kicks off this week of the 14th, this week of the 13th. On the 14th, we have some pretty interesting aspects happening to the asteroid Ceres, which is our biggest asteroid. She actually falls, I think, where is she at? She's right here. She falls here at 7 degrees of Gemini. And on the 14th, Mercury, which just came into Pisces, as we were saying, will be square her, the same time that Venus trines her. Why is this significant? Ceres is the mother of Persephone. Persephone is actually right next to her right now at 8 degrees. The two of them will actually meet on the 22nd, 2 days after the equinox. Which is ultimately what their mythology is all about. Persephone is the daughter of Ceres or Demeter, which is the Roman Greek versions of the same deity. And in the autumn, she is kidnapped by, that's interesting. Okay. In the autumn, she is kidnapped by Pluto or Hades and taken to the underworld, where she remains for half of the year. And then in the spring, she rises and she reunites with her mother, Ceres, the earth mother, the fertility mother, the mother of the seasons, the mother who gives life to the earth and gives it vegetation and harvest. What's interesting is that I just realized when I zoned off into space right now, is that it's trining Venus. So Venus is Aphrodite. And people leave this part out of the mythology a lot. So yes, Pluto or Hades kidnaps Persephone and takes her to the underworld, but he did not do that for no reason. People blame him like he's some crazy, like Zeus just out there raping people for no reason. He was literally minding his own business. And Aphrodite, his sister, was like, yo, Hades is like kind of like alone. Like, we need to get him a girlfriend. And so she had her son, Eros, which is Cupid, shoot him with an arrow of passion, which is interesting that it's conjunct Mars, the planet of passion, which is also kind of trying this point right now. And so he was like out of his mind. He was like, oh, look at her. I feel so passionate about her and I have to kidnap her. And so he kidnapped her and brought her down to the underworld. And so ultimately it stems back to Venus. And Venus is really the only female planet that we have other than the moon. We've talked extensively on Patreon about how Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, an earth sign, a feminine sign, and Aquarius, a air sign, a masculine sign, is like neutral. And in Vedic tradition, they actually look at it that way. They look at Saturn as a neutral planet, but really really in the zodiac, all we have is regular feminine expressions are the moon and Venus. The moon being this deeply shifting, feminine, emotional waters, deeply connected to intuition and the reflection of this like primordial essence. And then Venus, which ultimately is an inaccurate representation of the feminine expression and is way more patriarchal, much like Pallas Athena, who Venus was birthed from the castrated member of Uranus, and Athena, another Greek deity, was birthed from the head of Zeus, both birthed from this masculine perspective. So is it any wonder that they treat the women of these mythologies so much like men do, right? And so we have these planets trining Ceres. Ceres is a more holistic look at the feminine. She's very representative of Virgo, the full moon that we will have just a couple of days later. Ceres is that earth mother, that Gaian mother, that deep connection to the land and nature and femininity and mothering and nurturing that these other, the moon does have, but that Venus particularly does not. And so on the 14th, we're really shifting into the, starting to shift into the Virgo moon, which we'll have in a couple of days, and really starting to squirt. Stop biting. Yeah, I see you. I'm going to get you a jumpsuit if that sweater isn't working good enough. I have to put clothes on her because if I don't, she just bites herself to death. I don't like it either. I think you look ridiculous. Love you. Okay. What was I saying? We have these planets shifting it. Mercury is square it. So our mind is being triggered while in Pisces, while in this realm of mysticism and magic and the deep primordial cosmic womb that births the zodiac into existence. This is where we merge with the Akash. This is where we merge with the whole. This is where we merge with literally everything. We have no boundaries. We can access it all. And we can remember what we have forgotten. This is the unconscious. This is where everything has been repressed and pushed under the rug. And we're being asked to look at a couple of key things. We have Mercury, the mind, triggered by Ceres, by this earth mother, by this divine mother connected to the land that we have culminating and shining and being illuminated by the Virgo moon. We also have the sun sextiling the north node on that day. So the sun will be sextiling the north node, asking us to take a new direction. That node falls in Taurus. It falls in another earth sign. It falls in our first earth sign, the sign that really connects us to this physical reality, the sign that really connects us to the fertility of our foundations. And so it's asking us to look at this differently. We look at Taurus often in a masculine lens, as a bull, as this Taurian, tough, stubborn bull, when really, and I've talked a lot about this over on Patreon, if you go back far enough, it's connected more to that primordial cow, that cow that is deeply connected to the fertility of the land and the goddess, much like Taurus itself, which is another earth sign connected to the land. On the 15th, the moon will enter into Virgo, which is preparing us for the moon that will actually be on the 18th at the ending degrees of Virgo. So we're really going to be feeling this over the next couple of days. The 15th starts to really initiate this culmination of this divine feminine, this divine mother energy, which is often connected to that like Virgin Mary type archetype, but is also connected to Isis and all of these, not necessarily virgin deities, but divine mother deities that are reflections of the primordial mother, which is ultimately something I'm going to be talking about in my next video, of how Virgo, which sits opposite Pisces, is a reflection in the earthly realm of the primordial cosmic womb, because they are on the same axis, so they are reflections of one another and one in the same. I'm actually going to break down how the whole zodiac lays out. I had some pretty deep insights come through, but we're not going to touch on that now. So on the 16th, we will meet for our Virgo full moon, and we're going to dive very heavily into the full moon and how it is conjunct the supergalactic center. It actually falls in Virgo. It'll be at 27 degrees. So it's in a different sign than the supergalactic center, but it is technically conjunct the supergalactic center, and it sits opposite Neptune. So it is deeply plugged into the intangible etheric realm, and while illuminating what I call the muggle realm. I look at Virgo a lot as this physical earthly realm. It represents our duties and our responsibilities, and so I always like to say it's like the sign that governs like our muggle existence, but it governs service, it governs health, it governs our connection to our mind because it's ruled by Mercury, but also the body because it governs the 6th house, which very much rules our physical body. And the focus of Virgo is very much on balancing our mind and our body and finding a sort of healthy equilibrium between both. And a lot of that is done here in the physical realm. If we project too far out, which we all are going to, look at this you guys, this right here is like far out, dude. Like I don't even know what dimension we are going to be in with this. Like I've already just been, and with Mercury entering here, I don't know, I might disappear again, you guys. I tend to just go full-blown hermit mode whenever Pisces is activated. Okay, I'm just looking at this. So we also have Pallas Athena, which is the archetype I was talking about earlier, who is the goddess of wisdom and war, and she is birthed from the head of Zeus. And on the 16th, which is actually the day 2 days before the moon, she isn't on here. She's not on here. I didn't put her in. I don't know why I didn't put her in, but I have her on my notes. She will also conjunct Chiron. So we have the primordial goddess Sophia, which is a Gnostic concept. I've done videos on this deity before, but it's this Gnostic concept of the anima soul, this primordial soul of us and everything, right? That birthed light into existence and is some sort of like prerequisite to consciousness. Pre-consciousness, unconsciousness, primordial consciousness, but it's deeply feminine in nature. And we talked about how on the first Chiron conjuncted this almost forgotten aspect of the feminine. And then on the 16th, we have it conjunct Athena, which is ultimately one of the most well-known mythological figures when it comes to like Greek and Roman mythology. And ultimately, she is birthed from a man's head. And so it's this like inaccuracy in and of itself being triggered, and the wounds connected to how we look at where we came from. You know, Eve from Adam's rib, as opposed to Lilith as an equal, which actually brings me to, when is Lilith conjunct? Oh, not till the 20th. Okay, we'll get there. Not as Lilith as an equal. Lilith is very much kind of closer to the Sophia archetype, this like original feminine that was equal and then repressed in favor of patriarchal dominance, right? So on the 18th, we have our moon. I'm not going to get too far into it now. It's a full moon in Virgo. Look to see where Virgo falls in your chart. This moon was seeded 6 months ago, and so you have some sort of culmination happening in this house. Something can be harvest, something can be cultivated, you have a reward that you've worked towards over the past 6 months that is able to be obtained. And then you're also going to be asked to release as the moon starts to wane. A lot of this is going to happen around our house of service, our service to our practical, tangible reality and the things around us, and service to some higher spiritual, mystical cause, and finding a sort of balance in between. We always need to find a balance. We're going to have a lot of illusions coming through, but a lot of deep mystical insights as well. So it's just a matter of navigating them. Want to see here. Okay. I don't want to touch on that. Okay, so on the 19th, the day after our moon, Venus will exactly square Uranus. So Venus in Aquarius, the sign that Uranus governs, square Uranus in Taurus, both in fixed signs, and Mars is there as well. This is a tense aspect. This is actually happening on the day that it's technically the equinox. Technically, the equinox is on March 19th if you live on the west coast of the United States at 9:30 p.m. You can go ahead and change that time to your local time zone to find out when it's exact for you. Most people are going to be saying it's on the 20th. And for most people, it is technically on the 20th. I mean, I guess on the West Coast, it would be the 20th. On the East Coast, it would be the 20th. Venus square Uranus is erratic, unpredictable energy. Uranus is an electric planet that just manifests random shit into existence. It's in Taurus, the sign of like finances. Look to see what house Taurus is, because it is, different for everybody. But Taurus governs finances. It governs our foundation. It governs our very, 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 very fixed, stubborn beliefs. It governs what it is that we need to feel safe and secure. Literally all of the essentials. Food, money, shelter, things that we need. The fourth house also rules shelter, but like the things that we need in order to feel safe and secure, it literally governs safety and security. It's square. Uranus is square our planet of relationships and our planet of aggression, which are aligned with each other, and then square Uranus, which is extremely unpredictable and erratic, but fun and eccentric and wants to do weird, crazy things. Hey, honey, thank you. Here, can you take this one? You're the best. Oh, God, I really needed that. My back was killing me. Okay, Uranus is weird. Crazy. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Okay, so on the 19th, which is technically the moment of the equinox, we have our planet of relationships and our planet of aggression together. Square this very unpredictable planet that likes to do weird shit, but so Rick used to always kind of describe Uranus as literally like electrical buildup. So Uranus governs Aquarius, which is also governed by Saturn. Saturn being the planet of structure and Aquarius being the planet that and limitations and Aquarius being the planet that like breaks free from structures and like literally hates limitations and wants to like push forward and progress. And he says that Uranus, if he doesn't have an avenue to express his energy, he will manifest as just like random bursts of electrical shit to go down. Like the energy has to have somewhere to go. It has to have a avenue, right? So Uranus likes to do weird out of the box things. And so maybe this is again on a weekend. This is happening on the 19th, which is a Saturday. Maybe seek to intentionally do something new and exciting. Uranus, also Aquarius, which is where Venus and Mars are right now. Both of those are associated with new and exciting out of the box things with your loved ones. Take the action, Mars, to interact with your loved ones, Venus, in an out of the box futuristic way. I don't know, go do something weird. And then you're working with this energy and not leaving it up to chance for it to manifest as, I don't know, the sink exploding or like, I don't know, some weird thing going down. Maybe not a sink because that's water. Maybe like an electrical fuse blowing in your car or something super strange and weird. That forces you to like pull over with your loved one and like do something. I don't know. Something strange and weird will happen. Uranus has to have a way to manifest things. So just take the reins and do something out of the box. Out of the box on the 19th around the equinox. 19th and 20th. I think the 19th is when we're going to be doing Cosmic Kids, you guys. So the 19th was one of the days that I had picked. Either the 19th or the 20th. So I think we're going to do it on the 19th. Hopefully that's good for everybody. But we are meeting over on Patreon to sew little herb bean bags for the equinox with the kids. And we're going to like stitch them and fill them with different herbs and beans as like little satchels for the equinox. So you guys are more than welcome to come with us. Come and join us. It's available to all Patreon members at all tier levels. So we're going to do that on the 19th. So that's a weird out of the box thing to do with your loved ones. And it's Uranian. So it's like, I mean, I guess it's not really futuristic. It's actually kind of old school. But it's weird. And you guys have never done it before. So you guys can come do it with us. And then you're working with that energy. I don't know why I'm moving that over there. Okay. So let's move to the 20th. The 20th is when everybody's going to say is the equinox. That's technically the day that the sun moves into Aries. Mercury will also be conjunct Jupiter on that day. And Lilith will be opposite the galactic center. So we have some interesting transits building all month that are exact at the end of the month. Which we're going to touch on here, and that's Lilith conjuncting the pole star, Atlantis conjuncting the galactic center, and then them both opposing each other. So that starts to first kick off on the equinox when Lilith comes into exact opposition with the galactic center, a degree away from the pole star, and Mercury conjuncts Jupiter in Pisces. And we have the sun entering Aries. So we have this rebirth of the self. Aries governs the self. It governs the zodiac. This is the start of the zodiac. It's this initiation. I'm going to talk in my next video about how I believe the zodiac actually starts in Pisces season. The zodiac actually starts in Pisces. And I have a whole theory as to all of that. But for the sake of argument, the new zodiacal cycle starts in Aries season when we reach 0 degrees Aries. Aries governs our identity, our self, our initial base level primal flame of consciousness, often associated with the like lower manifestations. War. Aries governs war. He governs the warrior. He governs aggression and anger. It's Mars, who is the planet of literal war and the god of war, right? It's governed by Mars. And so all of these things bubble up to the surface. We will have the sun transiting Chiron during Aries season, really shining light on those core wounds, the type of wounds that make us lash out. We have all different kinds of wounds that make us manifest all different kinds of traumatic responses, and then we have those ones that really make us lash out from that like primal reptilian part of our consciousness. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot as Chiron has transited here. Well, the sun is coming back around to shine light on that. We've done a lot of work here, but now we're able to dive in a little bit more and see maybe where some of these stemmed from and how we can process those things. On the 20th, we also, which is the equinox, we also have Mercury conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. Both of those mental planets, our higher mind, our logical mind, together in the realm of the cosmic womb, in the realm of the mystic, in the realm of the wizard. This could be a moment of clarity. We have no planets that are retrograde at the moment. We have some asteroids that are retrograde. Everything is going direct. Things are coming through clear. This could actually be maybe when that Sphinx riddle that was initiated has some sort of like answer that comes through. This is where our philosophical mind, that questioning mind, and the logical mind are working together as one, which is ultimately what you would need to find an answer to a riddle. You can't think just logically, and you can't often think too mystically, because it takes some logic, right? But the two of them together can often find the answer to the riddle that is the illusion that is this whole Piscean wave we are in the midst of. And this is all happening as we're having this rebirth of the self. And this rebirth of the self will ultimately require us to integrate what we have repressed, right? As we were traveling through Pisces season, which we still have tons of stuff happening in that house, we were in the land of the repressed. This is the unconscious. This is the land of all that is unseen. And so we were working on integrating many, many, many aspects so that we can be reborn from a higher perspective, able to see things just a little bit more, able to embody just a little bit more, able to understand just a little bit more, able to start this new hero's journey as a better, more evolved version of said hero, right? We're just going on another quest. We just have some little bit of knowledge in our arsenal, right? And this initiates a new hero's journey. This actually initiates what I'm calling the pioneering mystic. So Aries is the sign of the pioneer. This is where we start things that have never been started before. This is actually right where my North Node is. So like literally part of my karmic mission is to just do things that nobody's ever done before in the realm of the occult and astrology, because it's in the 8th house, which is why I'm talking about this weird shit with you guys right now. I literally can't help myself. But we have this rebirth of this pioneering spirit, the same time that we're having this mystic initiation. And the reason why we are able to access these mystic truths or energies or wisdom or knowledge or understandings is because we have started to work to integrate what is unseen, which is ultimately represented by Lilith. Lilith represents all that is repressed, all that is unwanted, all that is shunned. It is the moon's shadow. It is the farthest point of its orbit. It is the shadow, right? It is all that, everything that holds what will liberate us and what is ultimately holding us back. And on the equinox, it will exactly oppose the galactic center, only a degree away from the pole star, that guiding point. This is, the pole star is ultimately what is guiding us, what's helping to keep us center. And right now, Lilith is on top of it. In order to access the gold that is the pole star, that is that axis mundi, we have to integrate this repressed feminine, this forgotten feminine, these wounds that will ultimately be triggered so much during Aries season. We have not left this yet. Aries is going to be a birth of creation, but it's only kind of birthing us in order to do more work just 11 degrees later. Let's see. Oh, the moon will oppose the Andromeda galaxy on that day too, so it's bringing in more galactic energy as well. Do I want to say anything more about the equinox? You guys, this is a moment of balance. Find a time, find a way to access it. I don't know how, and I don't really want to tell you how because I think this is all kind of personal. But this is it. We only have these moments twice a year. We have it when the sun enters Aries, and then we have it when the sun enters Libra. When we have our autumn equinox and our spring equinox flipped in the southern hemisphere. Brief, very brief moments of equilibrium where light and dark are of one, and we can harness this. Is it any wonder that they do the time change during this time? Is it any wonder that Greenwich, England has its freaking meridian, and so many important UK government facilities and organizations are in that city. It's right by London as well. They're harnessing this. Stonehenge is aligned right with that meridian. So many megalithic structures across the whole globe that predate history as we know it, including Göbekli Tepe, which is believed to be 12,000 years old, or probably honestly older because it was buried that long ago, so it has to be obviously older than that. Align with the sun, particularly on this day. Also the solstices, but usually mostly the equinox points, including like the pyramid of the feathered serpent, where you can see him descending. Quetzalcoatl. Is it Quetzalcoatl? Or is it? Yeah, I think it's Quetzalcoatl. Descending down the pyramid, the Aztec pyramid. Many different megalithic structures align with the sun at this time, including like Newgrange in Ireland and lots of other places. The ancients understood that this was in a very pivotal moment, and we've seemed to have forgotten it. We focus way more on solstices than we do the equinoxes, and I don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense, but find a time to harness this any way that you're called to. Work your magic, do your thing. We're fighting against the time change unless you're lucky and you happen to live in Arizona, which I know a lot of you do. So good for you guys. Maybe you guys can do a little bit of extra magic for those of us that are all thrown off kilter. But yeah, the 19th and the 20th, those are our equinox days. And like I said, the equilux is dependent upon your latitude. Okay, so on the 22nd, we are going to meet for another episode of Books and Buds, I guess it's called now. I don't know. I don't know. It might change. Where we're going to read the rest of this book. It might be broken up into a third one. I'm not sure. We'll see how far we get. But we're reading the foretelling over on YouTube, so we're going to meet on the 22nd to do that. It's a really great book, you guys. The first half of it is already available on YouTube. Kind of dark, a little disturbing, but it is based on legends that surround the Black Sea, particularly the area of Russia and the Ukraine, which, you know, I didn't know when I picked that book, but it seems super fitting. We talked about Venus squaring Uranus and being that sort of like do something out of the box or something weird is just going to manifest into your reality because Uranus is weird and unpredictable. Well, Mars will come into its exact square with that point on the 22nd as well. So really this leads us into that whole week. And the 22nd is actually a really pivotal day. Not only are we going to be meeting for our live stream, which now I'm thinking I might want to move because I'm thinking I don't want to do it on that day. Okay, we're going to do the live stream for the book on the 24th, because on the 22nd, the sun opposes the supergalactic center, meaning it opposes my sun, because my sun is conjunct the supergalactic center, and it also falls on my nodes. So I kind of need to do my own thing on that day and not be worrying about the internet. So we're moving the B&B, the book live stream, to the 24th. But the 22nd, we have not only Mars coming to square Uranus. Uranus is not only that like shocking planet of like unpredictability, he is the electric planet of like downloads and insights and awakening and rebellion and all of the things that ultimately liberate us. But it can be extremely volatile energy, particularly with Mars in the mix. This has a lot to do with our production, like means of production and distribution of goods and money and fuel and all of those things. So keep that in mind. We have that square Mars and Venus in the sign of humanity and the collective, and so these things are kind of at odds. It's also kind of volatile when it comes to like conflict and aggression. So world stage and in your reality, keep that in mind. Being as though it's in Aquarius, it could have a lot more to do with friends as opposed to loved ones. This Venus in Aquarius could have a lot more to do with friends and groups and collectives as opposed to like your intimate personal relationships. So on the 22nd, we also have the sun coming into exact opposition with the supergalactic center. If you guys have followed me for a while, you know this is like my favorite point in the sky. I'm a little partial to it. My sun is conjunct it. I'm just going to really quick kind of explain to you how the sky lays out for those who don't know. So we have the Earth and all of the planets in our solar system, which revolve around our sun to the best of our knowledge. Obviously, that's up for debate, and a lot of people kind of do debate this, but I believe that we revolve around the sun. Then we have the sun. All of the other fixed stars in the Milky Way galaxy, like Sirius, and the stars in Orion, and the stars in Draco, and the Pleiades, all of those things, those are all stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and they all rotate around the center of our galaxy, which is the galactic center, which falls here at 27 degrees. The asteroid Atlantis will conjunct it later this month. Then we have the Milky Way galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, which actually falls here. Eris is almost conjunct it at the moment. The Milky Way galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, and like hundreds of other galaxies. I used to say 45 other galaxies because that's what they used to say, but now astronomers say it's several hundred. Several hundred galaxies all rotate around M87, which is also known as the supergalactic center. It's the center point of our supercluster, our Virgo supercluster, because this actually falls in the constellation of Virgo, but the sign of Libra. That is, my mouth is really dry. This is the center point for our greater cosmic logos. Hold on. Okay, the supergalactic center is believed to have been one of the first stars to originate after the Big Bang. It is believed to be a very, very, very ancient source of cosmic consciousness. It was a star very, 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 very long time ago. It eventually went supernova, turned into a black hole, and then became the focal point for a galaxy itself and the central hub for a supercluster. And so it is the central point of our greater cosmic logos. We also have the great attractor, which connects an even bigger aspect of the sky that are all being pulled together. That's an anomaly that we don't really understand, but it is believed to be like dark matter or dark energy. But for the most part, this is our, what's known as our sun's sun. So the sun's sun, what the sun rotates around, is the galactic center, the center of our galaxy. Well, the center of our galaxy rotates around the supergalactic center. So it's its sun, it's its focal point. And on the 22nd, our sun will oppose it. It aligns with it during the fall equinox, and it opposes it during the spring equinox. I've been following these transits for several years now, and they are pivotal moments. Probably even more so than the equinox. This is what we're feeling around that time, is this alignment with these black holes that are so very strong and so very penetrating into what sits beyond this time-space continuum. Other realms, other dimensions, I don't know, it's far out, but lots of things come through and we are just ignited and initiated into so much more. And that's going to be happening on the 22nd. This is actually the exact same day that Persephone and her mother meet. So like I had said before, the myth of Persephone is a myth to explain the shifting of the seasons. The daughter is pulled down to the underworld during the dark part of the year, and her mother is very, very sad. And so all nature dies while it waits for Persephone's return, who returns in the spring and brings with it the flood of fertility and the return of nature, the return of her mother being happy again and letting things grow. And so I find it interesting that the asteroids series, which is Demeter, and Persephone meet on the 22nd, 2 days after the equinox. So they are finally reunited, and they're going to be reunited the same time that we are reunited with the center of our supercluster with the sun in the sign of the self. So this happens twice. This happens in the spring when the sun is in the sign of Aries, the sign of the self. This is a rebirth of the self. This is a personal initiation, a personal activation. And then it happens again in Libra season. And this is more focused on union. This is more of a rebirth of the partnership, a rebirth of the union. And has a lot to do with others as well, and also the inner alchemy within. This is an initiatory process. This is a big spark from this cosmic source that we know very little about. There isn't a lot of information on this point. If you guys remember the picture of a black hole we got a couple of years ago in, like, I think it was 2019, that like red circle that everybody was like, oh look, it's the eye of Sauron. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. That is the supergalactic center. There are not a lot of astrologers that talk about it. Since I have been over the past couple of years, some people have picked it up and I have seen some posts on it, but for the most part, the only astrologer that really talks about points like this is Philip Sedgwick. I have his book, The Astrology of Deep Space, that he wrote a while ago. And so even for M87, for the Supergalactic Center, he doesn't have much stuff in here, but he does have a really great website that he is constantly adding to. And now his page for this point is really long. So if you guys want to just Google his name, it's Philip Sedgwick. I'll spell his last name, Sedgwick. And just, it's like, write those two words in astrology and go to his website, and over on the side, click like galactic points, and you'll pull up a page that has the great attractor, the galactic center, and the supergalactic center, and you can read all about it. He has some great stuff, some really good points, but really it's this center point of super consciousness, which has a lot to do with bringing up things from beyond, but also from the like unconscious aspects, because it is piercing that cosmic womb. It is piercing the veil to the other side. Those of us who have strong aspects to this, like, we don't even feel like we're from here. We always feel like we're like between time and space. Things move very, very quickly. And people kind of like revolve around us in order to kind of like be, I don't want to say like initiated, but be like, so they don't always necessarily stay. As you can see with like a lot of like the asteroids, if you look at a picture of the orbiting asteroids and like the deep space objects, you know, some of their orbits are very oblong and they'll come close to a black hole, but then they'll like swirl all the way around and not come back again for a very, very, very long time. And when they come, they're like projected and they're pushed along. That's also how like NASA uses satellites. Like they use the gravitational pull of an object to push it along. People who have strong black hole placements, whether it be the supergalactic center or the galactic center, have this sort of energy about them where people are kind of like drawn to them, but only to get like projected off in a very faded direction for that soul. They don't always kind of necessarily stay. Sometimes these people are somewhat like loners. But around this energy, we have this sort of like cosmic push coming to push us off in a new direction, really propel us forward on our orbit. And when it happens in Aries, it really is a like propelling that pioneering spirit forward in the development of the self. I'm hearing like know thyself. This might be a way to pierce through this Piscean veil of illusion that we are going to be so deep in. The 22nd, we're plugging into that source of super consciousness, which sits beyond Pisces and the zodiac, sits beyond our solar system, and is something much more ancient and much more plugged in to what sits beyond this time-space continuum. And remember, this is happening the same time that Persephone is meeting her mother, and we're having that sort of like union with the maiden and the mother here in the earthly realm, and the rebirth of the fertile earth and nature itself. Okay, and this happens like literally the day before Mercury conjuncts Neptune. When Mercury is conjunct Neptune, we are literal space cadets, you guys. Nothing makes any sense. Like that is an Alice in Wonderland mirror realm transit in any sign. Neptune and Mercury conjunct in any sign will make for deep influx of like creativity and like imagination, but delusion and confusion and mixed wires. Do not try to do anything heady. Well, next day I'm going to read, but I'm going to read a fantasy book, so that's fine. I'm not going to try to do anything too heady, but that day, the 23rd, nothing's going to make sense, you guys. So try to harness the 22nd. Try to harness that sun's opposition to the supergalactic center to kind of bypass a lot of the spell, a lot of that illusionary fantasy that is being painted for the collective right now. And we're also painting for ourselves. This right here is like rose-colored glasses. Like we are seeing things through the lens of fantasy. Things are not as they seem. Okay, which fast forwards me to the 27th. We're almost done, you guys. When Mercury will enter Aries. So Mercury will enter Aries on the 27th. And on that same day, it will oppose the supergalactic center, bringing more clarity and helping us to kind of see what this initiation of the self is all about. This is preparing us for work we're going to be doing very shortly, the beginning of next month on the 1st and the 2nd, when the Sun and Mercury will transit Chiron. This is giving us that boost that we need, like I said before, like the black hole, and we're like coming around to have that sort of like push to be pushed off, giving us that initiatory push to dive deeper into these core wounds that are ultimately standing in our way of knowing thyself, of having this full rebirth of this lower Martian, fiery, aggressive consciousness that we're ultimately trying to ascend to something beyond. So if you look at the Mars glyph here, Mars is the ruler of Aries. If you look at the Mars glyph and you look at the Sun glyph and you unite them together, we have Uranus. Uranus is that planet that it rules Aquarius, but Uranus is that planet that is pushing us beyond this solar system, beyond the gates of Saturn. It is that the planet of awakening, the planet of progress, the planet of the future. It is that awakened, enlightened consciousness, and it requires us to take both our solar consciousness, our egoic consciousness, and that deep primal consciousness that is Mars, both together, and push up and ascend both of these as together. We have to integrate the lower aspect, and that is done here in Aries, where we are really triggered. We are really triggered by our animalistic instincts of fight, of aggression, of anger, of resentment, of all of these things. This is where we're triggered, and this is also where we can heal so much, particularly as Mercury and the Sun transit over Chiron. Okay, on the 28th, Venus will conjunct Saturn in Aquarius. So this is an interesting transit. It's like a paradox transit. So Venus, well, it's in Aquarius. Okay, so Venus conjunct Saturn can go like one of two ways. Venus conjunct Saturn is extremely like loyal, bonded energy. Saturn is the planet of like commitment and loyalty, and Venus is the planet of relationships. And so together it can be good, right? Like commitment and longevity and all of that. But Saturn is also the planet of like boundaries and restrictions and like putting up walls. And so it can also manifest as that when it comes to our relationships or our values. Venus is relationships, values, money, all of those things. Now it's happening in Aquarius. It's not happening in like Libra, the sign of relationships. It's not happening in Scorpio, the sign of deep, personal, intimate relationships. It's happening in Aquarius, which is the sign of friends. It's the sign of the collective. It's the sign of groups. It's the sign of little sects of people. And so these walls and barriers might be coming from that realm instead. But it's definitely, it's rough energy. It's rough energy. Look to see where it's restrictive energy. Look to see where Aquarius falls in your chart. For me, it falls in my 6th house, which is my house of responsibilities and like duties. And so I have a feeling I will probably have to take responsibility and do things in regards to my loved ones. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll have to do my dishes or something. I don't know. But, I mean, Eddie did do all the dishes yesterday. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I was crippled, but I also really hate dishes. But I put the laundry away. He washed it. I love that man. The kids cleaned the living room. That was pretty good. It took a couple of days, but we really needed that. There was like fabric and art. We are all crafters, and we all have like a million hobbies. So there's usually just like stuff everywhere. But spring cleaning, this is definitely where we're working to clean things up. This is a good transit to take initiative and responsible action when it comes to the betterment of a collective, which can constitute as like the family as well too. But Venus conjunct Saturn, if like people are being like stern and stubborn and withdrawn, it's an Aquarius, which is already aloof and withdrawn, and then with Saturn there, it has a lot of like walls and boundaries, and it's more restrictive. Don't take it to heart. Venus will move into Pisces soon, and then we'll have no boundaries and we'll just be like super clingy. So like, don't take it too personal. Okay, so on the 30th, Atlantis will conjunct the galactic center. So I don't really know, you guys, how this is going to manifest. It's kind of like an impossible thing to even read. All I can do is like see these patterns in the sky and point them out, and I might know more as we get closer to it. But we have Atlantis, which ultimately represents this past timeline, this past cataclysmic karmic timeline that I'm a firm believer we are all repeating, particularly, and we all have karma connected to, particularly if you live in America, because America was literally built as a new Atlantis by occultists following Francis Bacon's concept of this new Atlantis, very embedded in scientific materialism and literally trying to recreate a utopian society based in science and the masculine mind. And we see that happening right now. We see that playing out right now. America was built on this. Even Columbus, they say Columbus was looking for India. He was not. He was looking for Anatolia, which was just another name for Atlantis. Most things tie back to Atlantis. Everything ties back to Atlantis. I believe most agendas, most government agendas, most secret society agendas, all of the occult agendas, everything ties back to unlocking and remembering what Atlantis knew and hiding it from everybody else. But this karmic asteroid will align with the center of our galaxy on that day. And so an inflood of like remembrance, perhaps, connection to all of the mystic truths, but also all of the karma connected to it will be flooding through. It's happening obviously in Sagittarius. That's where the galactic center is. Sagittarius is the sign of our philosophical mind. It's a sign of expansion, of belief systems. It rules religion. It rules the Hierophant. It rules these fixed systems. But it also rules our expansive mind that helps us to move beyond and obtain ultimately what we can obtain in Pisces, that deep mystical truth. So this is going to be happening on the 30th. We have our live stream that same day, and Venus will be square the nodes. So the nodes are those where we're at and where we're going points, those points that are our eclipses. These are where we're going to be feeling the biggest shifts this year. The area that's ruled by Pisces in your chart is going to be huge this year. Look to see where Pisces is in your chart. Lots of energy is being funneled to that area of your life, but also where Scorpio and Taurus are. This is where our north and south node are, and this is where all of our eclipses will be this year. The eclipses are like karmic redirections. It's where fate and destiny take the reins and we are propelled in new directions, and huge changes occur that we couldn't even see happening. And this is what we're going to be feeling once the sun leaves Aries and moves into Taurus. We'll be in eclipse season, and Venus coming up to the square on the 30th is giving us another little clue as to what might be coming for us when we do. A lot on a collective stage. Eclipses really happen a lot collectively. Huge collective things happen on the world stage, but personal as well. So definitely look to see where these houses are in your chart. If you guys know, you can comment them in the chat. On the 31st, we have our Aries New Moon. So we have 2 new moons this month. We have 2 new moons and an equinox. A new zodiac cycle is starting, a new Aries season, and then we have 2 new moons birthing in this month of March. We're sandwiched between these 2 new moons, one on the 2nd in Pisces and one on the 31st in Aries. And the Aries New Moon on the 31st actually sits on the 31st, there you go, conjunct Chiron. So we'll have the sun and moon. I think that it's at 11 degrees. The moon will be over like a little bit later. Conjunct Chiron and Mercury. And so we'll be diving into this deeper over on Patreon. I'm not going to go too deep into it now, but this is initiating a new 6-month story, where we are setting new things into motion, new things that have a lot to do with healing and integrating these deep core wounds that are programmed so deep within our psyche that they are connected more so to that like reptilian aspect of our consciousness, that primal animalistic part of our consciousness, the part that has us lash out without thinking, the instinctual parts of our consciousness. It's the only word that's obviously coming to my mind, so I'm just going to stick to it. But yeah, that'll be initiated on the 31st, and that'll culminate 6 months later. So the next 6 months is going to have a lot to do with the processing and integrating of these wounds, but then accessing the wisdom that they hold, because these deep core wounds, particularly these ones, which are connected to all of the things humanity is experiencing right now: war, aggression, anger, this warrior archetype that needs to stand up, but from a balanced perspective, are all being triggered right now. And we need to be. This is the stuff that we have to work through, because if we can't process ourself, Aries, we will have no help. We will be no help to the collective or anyone else. And this is where we really dig in to do the work on the self before we then continue on to the zodiac and we start to integrate with other people and the world. This is where we are birthed within our own self before we then venture out and start to integrate other aspects of reality. So this is a very pivotal moon that sets the tone for the rest of the year, the rest of the zodiacal year. So definitely make sure that you are setting intentions on the 31st that really revolve around healing deep-seated core wounds, the type of core wounds that result in instinctual lashing out and Aries type, Martian type energies, which we'll expand on that later. Okay, we're just going to touch on the 1st and 2nd of March, because I am not sure when I'm going to do the video in March, probably maybe on the 3rd, because it'll be right after a moon and I'm always exhausted. So I wanted to touch on at least the first 2 days because they have important transits happening. So the first 2 days of April are when the Sun and Mercury actually transit Chiron. So the Sun's exact conjunction will be on the 1st and Mercury's exact conjunction will be on the 2nd, following that Aries moon. Really asking us, did we set into motion the things we wanted to set into motion? Did we plant those seeds here in the spring? The seeds for ourselves in order to grow the plant of the self before we worry about anybody or any freaking thing else. We have to make right with ourselves. And that's all aspects of the self, including the parts we don't want to look at, because that ultimately holds the key. Look at Chiron, it looks like a key, the key that unlocks everything. Not only do we have the Sun and Mercury conjuncting Chiron, but they're doing it together. They're transiting Chiron together, particularly on the 2nd. They're both going to be like literally right on top of Chiron. That has an energy that helps us to see and understand. So where the sun is at, the sun shines light in places we are unaware of oftentimes in order for us to see. Mercury is the planet that helps us to understand what it is that we are seeing, to get the message, to receive the information, to collect the data, to understand it. And they're both working together on top of Chiron with this huge initiatory moon in order to help us actually see. And it's going to be seeing perhaps wounds we were aware of. Chiron's been here for a minute in Aries, triggering these parts of the self. Or perhaps these could be new wounds that we were unaware of, helping us to see things we could not see before. But this is really going to be what we're feeling at the end of the month. But this is ultimately helping us, like I said, with this key to unlock the magic and the wisdom it holds. And we see that manifesting through another transit, which is Uranus conjunct Hecate. So the same time that we have the Sun and Mercury transiting Chiron, helping us to see and understand the core wounds that stand in the way of our magic and our wisdom, we have Uranus, the planet that helps us break free and liberate ourselves, conjunct Hecate, who also is responsible for helping us liberate ourselves. She is actually the one that helps guide Persephone and her mother back to each other through the underworld. She is the goddess who governs magic itself. She is the three-faced goddess, the mother, maiden, crone. She governs magic and has dominion over all of the realms in Greek mythology. And she's ultimately there focused on sovereignty and liberation, particularly for those who are endowed in the mystical arts. She's said to be like the patron of witches, right? And like I said earlier, we are really focused on this like rebirth of the pioneering mystic right now. And so we have this energy coming through that helps us break free Uranus and find our magic, Hecate, but it will require us to integrate the wounds that stand in the way. But we're able to see and understand them around this time. Even with the Piscean illusion happening, the end of the month brings a lot of clarity, particularly clarity around deep parts of our primal animalistic psyche. Okay. I think that's all. I just want to look at, because I did write some notes here on the back. I just want to see if I wrote all this stuff here. If I said all this stuff here. Persephone returns. We talked about the light sky. The equilibrium in our many golden age. Yeah, I think I talked about all this stuff. Good job, Allie. Yep. All right, guys. I pulled a card. I pulled cards. Let's go to the cards, and then we'll call it a night. This was the chart that was supposed to tell me to go to the chart. Okay, so I pulled two cards. I pulled a card. Oh, and I also used my dice, my esoteric dice that I made. You guys might have known about these. I don't know if you know about these. But I was like, okay, what is the most important stuff to lean into. And these are what came out. And it's literally all of the freaking things we just talked about. Okay, these are the dice that came out. The like black hole dice, which obviously speaks to this supergalactic center alignment that is happening with our sun throughout the month, right? But also this Atlantis conjunct the galactic center and the Lilith conjunct the pole star opposition. This is that axis mundi, that pole star opposite the galactic center, that gate of man, gate of the gods, the portal we came through, and ultimately the portal we're meant to go through afterwards. And so we have a lot of like galactic influence coming through. Also had the Lilith glyph come out, and so that tells me that this Lilith pole star conjunction is very important. The pole star is our guiding point. It's the still point that shows us, guides us through the sea, right? It's a guiding light that sailors use, and Lilith is there, which tells me integration of what is repressed is what is going to be important moving forward. And we can see that with this Chiron conjunction as well, which brings me to the Chiron glyph that came out as well, telling me that this end of the month and these Chiron activations are a key pivotal thing to pay attention to. Also had the glyph that I made for light come through, which is reminding us that this is the return of the light. We have this moment of equilibrium, this balance between light and dark that happens at the equinox, but then from there the energy gives way to a dominance of light, so a dominance of consciousness of what we see and what we know. And so the intentions that we set around this Aries moon will really set the stage for where we are moving forward as we integrate more light and more understanding and are able to see more things. And with that comes shadow. With light comes shadow. With light comes ego as well. And so we need to keep that in mind moving forward. And then the two sign glyphs that came out were, of course, freaking Pisces and Virgo, which is this axis that's going to be highlighted for the majority of the month. We're in Pisces season for the majority of the month, and we have that Virgo full moon on, I think, the 18th. That is conjunct the supergalactic center and opposite Neptune. And so those are going to be pivotal moments as well. I was kind of blown away at all of the dice that came out so accurately. I need to use those more. I don't use them enough. Okay, back to these cards. Okay, so I pulled an archetype card, and the card that came out was the riddle, which is what prompted me to go look and see where the Sphinx is, which, remember, will be conjunct Saturn tomorrow, initiating some sort of new riddle. But a riddle is an illusion that has an answer, and that answer usually has some sort of mystic truth about it, but not necessarily. Sometimes it can just be what helps you to pass a gateway, an initiatory gateway to another world. Think like The Labyrinth, the movie The Labyrinth, or even like the Never-Ending Story or something like that. Okay, I forgot to look up the page. I normally look up the page before because it takes a while. Hold on, the riddle. $171. Okay, the riddle. And I like how this card has like multiple star influences, not just like solar influence, but like insights coming from like multiple stellar locations, like we talked about several just now. And then this in the middle, it looks like an eye, but to me it looks very similar to that supergalactic center image we got in 2019 of that like red circle. Okay, the puzzle, the question, the mystery. When the riddle is present, one must stop searching for the right answer. It cannot be found, and ultimately it is not important. Rather, there must be a shift from the literal to the metaphorical. Lean into the symbolic realm. From logic to that which is mythic. You are thinking too small and literally about the situation. The riddle card appears when the energy is deep and mysterious, like the elusive wisdom of Zen koan. Focusing harder won't do it. Neither will increased effort. Time, surrender, and humor are your only allies. What feels like the most pressing dilemma won't reveal its deeper wisdom for a long time. Eventually, you'll learn a profound lesson from the riddle. For now, get comfortable with the limitations of your intellect and the reality of not knowing. It may, in fact, be the only reality there is. Ponder these koans. I don't know what a koan is. Koans. Does anybody have any idea what that is? I think it's Buddhist in origin, because it goes on to say, the coin that's lost in the river is found in the river. If you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. Who am I? The only way to work with a riddle successfully is to not work. You have to embrace the expression of the riddle. Like, you have to embrace Wonderland, and then you have to we have to go with the flow this month, particularly when we're traveling all of the Piscean energy. It's really leaning into that mythic realm, really leaning into the unknown, really understanding that you are in a riddle, that you are in an illusion, that things are not as it seems, and kind of like embracing that. When this archetype is evolved, it is a great awakening or a aha moment. And when it's in its lower archetype, it is manipulation, deceit, or trickery. To go deeper, it says you can practice the Buddhist I don't know mind, which probably just means nobody knows. Nobody knows anything. What do we really know? Do we really know anything? I'm not really sure we do. But I think we also intuitively know everything at the same time. Oh, the realm of paradox. Okay, so then I pulled a card from the Wild Harmonic Oracle. These are the two decks I've been using the most. They're phenomenal. And I was like, okay, so we're in this riddle, right? How do we navigate it? Like, what can we do to navigate this the best? And this is actually the card that we pulled over on Patreon for the last moon. And so obviously we still need this same sort of energy. And this is the card. Spirit of Earth. This Virgo moon that's on the 18th, not only is that going to be like a culmination in the area of your life ruled by Virgo, blah, 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 or you're also going to need to release. That is a moment of grounding, of peak grounding that we need to take advantage of. We really need to make sure we're swimming through these Piscean waves of ethericness, of boundarylessness. We are so ungrounded and scattered and mutable and flowing, and Virgo is mutable energy as well, but it is grounded in the physical. It's grounded in the earthly, and it is very connected to the earth realm. And so the Virgo moon on the 18th is prime time to harness grounding that we really need. That'll be shortly after the time change and right before the equinox. And so find some ways to stay grounded during that time. Go put your feet in the dirt, drink some tea, burn some herbs, walk on the grass really is an ideal way. Hug a tree, sit by a tree, talk to a tree, eat root vegetables. I like potatoes. Drink green juice is another way that I do that. Vegetable juice. Eat fruit, vegetable, plants. Connect with plant medicine intentionally are all really great ways. I prefer marijuana. It's my favorite. And if you use a bong, you are incorporating all of the elements. So you're incorporating the earthly element of the plant. You're incorporating the water element in the water, fire, and air. And then you and your consciousness is that energy of ether, that fifth element. And all together is a full-blown ritual. So you can do anything intentionally and make it ritualistic. Okay, spirit of earth. As the spirit of creativity embodies into earth energies, I'll just finish reading this and then I'll tell you my insight. As the spirit of creativity embodies into earth energies, a play of interactive learning inside and out ensues. So it says, as the spirit of creativity, that to me speaks very heavy to this Piscean influence that we're feeling during Pisces season. Embodies into earth energies, embodies into the physical realm in the opposite side, in the opposite sign of Virgo. A play of interactive learning, which is literally what Virgo represents. It's ruled by Mercury, the planet of learning. Virgo is very focused on learning from a multitude of different sources, data collection and learning. Learning ensues both inside and out. Okay, it has a little meditation and a little inquiry. The meditation says, deep listening infused with conscientious response is the card of doing our best. It is a dynamic, living expression of how beings meet. It is the situation of mutual insistence, but also learning the willingness to yield. Finding the moment in each moment is the only way to know whether to push or to pull. Responding to life halfway, ready, aware, allowing, and strong, and above all curious. Reaching beyond the solitude of instinct, but bringing it with me, I find the wilderness of dances to weave my way through. Reaching out with my senses, I feel both how my presence moves energy and how the presence of others moves me. This speaks a lot to that Venus-Saturn conjunction as well in Aquarius. In such a potential whirlwind, collision warnings abound. I must sink into my being deeply in order to remain adaptable. Yet, I must not forget to move with my own integrity first. Inquiry. What is pressing me from within and without, and how can I best move to respond to it all? That'll really help a lot to set those intentions in Aries season. Aries is the sign of action, the sign where we respond, the sign where we take initiatory action and spark things. It's a cardinal sign. It starts, not only does it start spring, but it starts the zodiac, and it starts that development of the self. All right, that's all I got for you guys. We'll meet later this month. Totally sorry about throwing my globe across the room. That was fun and probably super loud for those of you listening later. Yeah, we will meet on the 16th. So next week we'll meet on the 16th for the Virgo moon, and then we'll meet again on the 24th here on YouTube to read the rest of that book. And then we'll meet again on the 30th for the Aries New Moon. And then on the 19th, we're going to do Cosmic Kids. So if you guys want to come and craft with me and the kids, that would be fun. Oh, and I'm wearing my Equinox shirt today. This is actually from, you can find her on Instagram. Her handle is holy, oh man, I'm gonna find it for you guys. Holy tear or something. Holy tear dust. Holy tear dust. And she hand makes these. She hand carves stamps. And then this is hand bleached and then hand screen printed, and it's freaking beautiful, and she has so many different designs, so definitely check her out. There are dots between holy tear and dust. And then this, since it's the equinox, this is actually the Stonehenge talisman that I made, which is available on my website. And these are stones actually sent from the same quarry as the stones from Stonehenge. So these came directly from Wales, directly from the guy who lives on the piece of land where the quarry is, and he hand carves them. And I made these talismans, so they're available on my website if you guys want, but this would be a great thing to maybe, buy yourself for the equinox. But I'm done shamelessly promoting all of my endeavors. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for staying up late with me. I will see you guys later. I heard Discord was like down all day. Discord and Spotify. I don't know if you guys noticed. I noticed at some point after I saw people talking about it, I went over it and checked, and yeah, Discord was down. But I think it's back. I think it's back now. So have a great night, guys.